Okay, so may I start? So this is the last the physics lecture, and so in this lecture I'm gonna touch more the deep learning, mostly deep learning application to the SPECT and the PET and other medical imaging the modalities. So yeah, actually in my talk I will do not mention about the underlying the principle or something like that for deep learning. So I will just introduce some of our work that we used the deep learning for improve the nuclear medicine imaging qualities or improve the procedures. So all nuclear medicine images. So actually that I'm gonna touch mostly touch three different topics. The first one will be the fully automatic the volume of interest drawing for the quantitative SPECT city. And the second one will be the SPECT scatter reduction. So based on the the deep learning based the single image score resolution technique. Then finally I will tell you a little bit about our recent work on the very fast very ultra fast personalized the voxel based geometry the based on the deep learning. So yeah, actually so yesterday actually I couldn't touch the quantitative SPECT city because of the limited time. But so as you may know, so by use of the CT data so as attenuation map for the SPECT, now in the SPECT city, so we can have a very accurate quantitative values for the radioactivity in the SPECT. So even that we can calculate the SUV value so using the SPECT city data. So yeah, due to the kind of improvement in the attenuation correction and the scalar correction and collimated tensor response modeling, the accuracy of quantitative SPECT has been much improved. But how to say to have the benefit of such the quantitative SPECT city, unfortunately that so we need to draw lots of the region of interest or the volume of interest. For example, that coefficient long scan, that we should draw this kind of volume of interest to quantify the radioactivity distribution different lobe of the lungs or something like that. Yeah, I would say this kind of the drawing the volume of interest or the region of interest is a very time consuming job, and it is really labor consuming jobs for our medical people, like resident technologists or something like that. Yeah, personally, I think this is very valuable things, but it takes a really long time. For example, so in our school, so in the Bundang, the SNU Bundang Hospital, actually we are using the SPECT city for the quantitative evaluation of the GFR by drawing the volume of interest onto the parenchyma of the kidney. But actually, so we can improve the quantitative accuracy, so in the calculation of GFR by applying this kind of the excellent technique. As I told you, it takes about 15 minutes or something like that to draw volume interest on the both kidneys. So in Bundang Hospital, that our residents are doing the job, but actually, their complaint level is really high because it takes too long time. Okay. Yeah. So that is why that so we have the decide is to the develop decide to develop some deep learning technology that can replace the human expert. So in drawing the 3D-dimensional the volume interest onto the kidney parenchyma. So if it will be successful, I think that it will be quite useful to the how to say to reduce the human effort for this kind of quantitative the spectroscopy. So actually this was the collaboration between one of my students, the PhD student, and that one of our residents, to collect data and draw the volume interest and develop the deep learning models. So actually that the resident Dr. Ben, actually that he and his colleagues has drawn the volume interest on the kidney parenchyma on more than the 400 the cases or something like that. So then actually that we used the original the CT data obtained in the SPECT city, and this manually drawn volume interest as we used them as an input to the input and the reference to the 3D deep learning network. So I mean that the deep learning was trained to produce this automatically segmented image once the SPECT is, once the CT data is given to the network as an input. So actually that we repeated this train to make this output. And then that based on this automatically segmented the kidney volume interest, so we could obtain the quantitative the value of radioactivity in the SPECT. So for this, so among more than 400 data, about 355 data was used for training this network, and about 40 data was to evaluate this deep learning networks. And then that we shuffled the data, randomly shuffled the data, and did file for the validation to see whether this kind of a training was robust. So you can see here, the model of deep learning network that we have used. Actually, we used in a 3D-dimensional the UNA, the U-shaped network, in which the 3D CT data was given as a input to the network, and finally the outcome of this network was 3D-dimensional the volume of interest. So let me show the some of the result. That was a comparison between the manual segmentation and the deep learning algorithm. So actually, actually, that this patient, has the, uh, some, I think that this was a tumor where the cyst word. Maybe I think it was cyst. So that when we draw the volume of interest, usually we exclude the cyst because that is not functional part of the kidney. So actually that the human draw well, and he excluded the cyst well. And that the deep learning network also works quite well, like humans. So actually this guy that could distinguish the normal soft tissue and cyst maybe by comparing their intensity. Okay. So this is but actually that it usually, as I told you, about 15 to 20 minutes. But actually that we just need a few seconds to draw this volume. Okay. So this is another example. So in this example, actually that this job was to draw volume of interest only on the kidney parenchyma. But so you can see here, the deep learning network drew quite well, but there was some error in the manually drawing volume of interest. So that was mainly because that so drawing the region of interest on the every slice is very time consuming. So if we draw the volume, the region of interest on the every slice it will take about 1 hour or something like that. So the residents draw every 3 or 4 slices, and then software automatically interpolate those the region of interest to fill the gap between the such slices. So such interpolation causes this kind of error, but deep learning doesn't need that kind of interpolation or something like that. So that is why in this case it worked better than human. Yeah, but we actually that in few cases we could also find some error in the deep learning outcome. I mean that the human draw well and human draw well exclude this part, the tumor or the cyst, but actually deep learning network couldn't distinguish this area from the lobus of the kidney parenchyma. But sometimes that so I think this is because sometimes it is hard to distinguish this cyst or the tumor from the kidney parenchyma in the non-contrast enhanced the city. So the deep learning couldn't do it, but maybe I think that the human refer the contrast enhanced city. So they may know that actually this is the tumor or the cyst by the help of the kind of audition. Okay. This is another case, where the deep learning, outperform, the humans. I mean that, actually we don't need to include stone, kidney stone, because there is no uptake in the kidney stones. But actually, in the human drawing, they could not, exclude this the stone, but the deep learning could wear. Exclude these stones because the stone usually has very high house field in it. Okay. This is very interesting case. Most people has two kidneys. So deep learning are supposed to draw 2 kidneys, because most of the training data is 2 kidneys. But if that there is only 1 kidney, the deep learning has just tried to throw something here, but he couldn't draw that. By the way, when we calculated in the GFR based on this deep learning based the volume, so you can see here that the GFR based on the manual segmentation and GFR based on automatic segmentation correlates really. Okay. So it works like in humans. So yeah, actually in Bunda Hospital, that we are now using this software. So for our the GFR estimation, so based on the SPECT, and some vendor have interest in our algorithms. So we have started to work with them to implement it into the real SPECT the scanners. So let me see whether this movie peak time is not. Yeah, actually, these slides are supposed to show you the movie that how this software is working, but the peak time is not so. So let me just move to our next approach. Yeah. So now we are moving to other organs like the thyroid and the salivary gland. So segmentation. So yeah, actually that we also wanted the quantify the technician nitrogen activity in the salivary gland as well. So actually, we did almost the same job, based on the CT data and the manually drawing the volume interest. And so you could see here. This looks done. Yeah, actually, that this was manually drawn the volume interest on the salivary gland, and so this is the deep learning outcomes. So yeah, so based on about the 80 preliminary data, actually we could achieve about the nice similarity of 70 to about 70% or something. It looks quite promising. Although it is quite difficult, even for human, it is quite difficult to draw the volume in the salivary on the non-contrast enhanced signal. The second one that I'd like to introduce you is the SPECT scan time reduction by reducing the angular samples in SPECT, based on the single image super resolution technique in the deep learning. Okay. Yeah. So yeah, there is actually that so yeah, we can reduce SPECT scan time by reducing actually there is two ways that by reducing the time for each projection, or that we can by reducing the number of the angular samples. Okay. Right. So yeah, so deep learning is quite useful for the both ways. That if we use a kind of the denoising technology based on deep learning, we can reduce time for each projection. And if we use a kind of super resolution technique, I think that so we can reduce the number of the angular samples. But so as you know, that if we reduce angular samples in SPECT, so it will cause kind of star artifact. I mean that if you look at this slide, I think that you can remind of that you can be reminded of the kind of star artifact by reducing the number of samples. So for example, that if we just use the A projection data, we can see this kind of very severe artifact. So it is very curious whether so we can reduce the number of angular samples without having this kind of artifact by the deep learning. Okay. So so I think that so let me assume that you are familiar with sinogram of the SPECT data. So actually that the fully sampled sinogram looks like that. So let me just assume that we acquired SPECT data every 3 degrees or something like that. Then we're gonna have 120 the angular samples. But that if we reduce the number of angular samples, I mean that if we acquire data every 6 degrees or 12 degrees, something like that, then that the sinogram will be undersampled like that. So actually, what we have tried to do was recover this fully sampled data from the this undersampled data, so using the super resolution deep learning networks. Okay. So I mean that deep learning network was trained to produce this fully sampled data once this undersampled data is given to the deep learning networks. So I would say this is a kind of the super resolution technique or the kind of deep learning based interpolation techniques. I mean that we just interpolate the data so in this direction, in this the angular direction, from the undersampled data to the fully sampled. But I think that we have quite good national in this kind of interpolation, because in the sinogram space. So as you may know, the point source in the image space are represented as the sine wave in the sinogram. So the human can actually interpolate this sine wave, even we don't have some data by the blocking this images. Okay. So actually, even though we didn't have any data here, actually we can do that. So human can interpolate the sinogram space easily if there is only the single point source. But but the reality is quite difficult, because the patient is the point source. Actually, it is the large distribution of very complex and activity distributions. So that is why that human cannot interpolate this sinogram space if we don't have some angular samples. But deep learning work quite well. So actually, these are two sinograms. So one of them are fully sampled sinogram, original sinogram, and one of them is the interpolated. I mean the interpolated the sinogram from the undersampled data using the deep learning. So one of them is a deep learning outcome. So can you tell me which is real original one and which is the deep learning generated interpolated using concept? So which is original, which is that is quite difficult to distinguish them. So but same that one of them is original the sinogram and one of them is a deep learning output that interpolate the data from the undersampled, but it is very hard to distinguish them. Okay. So let me show you some more data. So actually, this is the undersampled data by force. The 25% undersampled data. I mean that this was the fully sampled data. I mean the original sinogram and this is 4 times on the sample data. So it means that so we can acquire this data by use about 25% of scan time. Okay, if this takes about 20 minutes, it just takes 5 minutes. Okay, so this is the outcome of a linear interpolation, simple linear interpolation in this direction. But this is a deep learning outcome. So it looks quite similar to the original. This is another example. This is original data, and on the sampled one, linear interpolation, and the deep learning. Yeah, it still works quite well. Okay. What happens if we reconstruct, these, sinograms? So, yeah, if we, the reconstruct, the undersampled, sinogram data, actually, it yield, so large of noise. So mainly due to, such the star artifact that we already know about that. Yeah. So, and linear interpolation make, very severe artifact, like this, like hurricane or something like that. But the deep learning outcome, deep learning super resolution data, looks quite similar to the original ones. Okay. So this is another case of the undersampled data, 4 times undersampled data. I mean that the undersampled data causes this kind of noise, and linear interpolation make the artifact. Deep learning outcome is quite similar to the yeah, so yeah, personally I think this kind of the super resolution technique would be quite useful for any other modalities, so like CT and even for MRI or something like that. So in particular, that so we have had much interest in generating 3D-dimensional 3D MR from the 2D MR. So that if we have 3D MRI without gap between the transsexual slices, actually we can apply many very advanced volumetric image techniques. So I mean that we can apply many the algorithms like voxel-based morphometry, or we can calculate the cortical thickness of brain or something like that using the very advanced image analysis techniques. But in most clinical data, we just acquire the only 20 or the 25 transsexual slices in MRI to reduce the scan time. But only those slices would be enough for the clinical diagnosis or something like that. But it is very hard to apply advanced the volumetric analysis to these 2D MR data. So if that we can recover this fully sampled data, I mean the 3D data from the 2D MRI, actually we can apply those kind of advanced 3D MR analysis techniques to the clinical 2D MR data sets. Okay. So yeah, so actually so let me just show you the result of our investigation. So this was the original 3D MRI with almost isotropic voxel size, and this one is the linearly interpolated data from the 5 times on the sampled one from the 3D MRI. I mean that the linearly interpolated data from the 2D MRI with 4 slices gap so between each slice. Okay, so we can easily realize that it has a kind of stem-like the artifact or something like that here, but deep learning could recover the 3D MRI like this. So yeah, so if we compare this data, so original 3D MRI and the super resolution the MRI from the 2D data, it looks quite similar. It looks quite same. Yeah. Or that, and actually that so we can also realize that the noise level in this light, the image is lower than the left ones. So we can simultaneously do the super resolution and the denoising of the MR images. So this is another example. So this is 3D data, and this is linearly interpolated data from the 2D MR. But this is the deep learning outcome. So this the 3D data generated by the deep learning network looks quite similar in terms of the anatomical details of the brain. And we can also see some additional benefit of this network that has removed this kind of big artifact. So yeah, I think this is quite interesting. So then let me just okay. So then we applied some the gray matter segmentation onto the original 3D MRI and linear interpolated data and deep learning outcomes. So yeah, because that we can see very similar anatomical details in the deep learning outcome. The output of gray matter segmentation looks also quite equivalent to the original. Yeah, this is voxel-based comparison. So between the linear interpolation data and the original 3D MRI, and we can see lots of differences between these data, but there is almost no difference between the original 3D MR and deep learning output when we evaluate the voxel level difference using the voxel-based Morphometry. Okay. So how about the cortical thickness? So yeah, so actually that we can see here the deep learning network could produce almost the same the cortical thickness as the original data because there is almost no difference in the voxel levels in the cortical thickness. Okay. And this is the group comparison. I mean that so this is the group comparison of the voxel-based morphometry between the MCI patient and the normal controls using the original 3D MRI, linear interpolation, and deep learning output, and they look quite similar. And this is the comparison between the AD patient the brain and normal control for voxel-based morphometry and original 3D MRI and our deep learning output produce almost the same. So, so it supports that so maybe I think we can use this deep learning based super resolution data for the 3D voxel level evaluation of gray matter density or the cortical thickness or something. So let me now move to the last the topic that I'd like to introduce today. So we have also interested in how to utilize deep learning to replace some very time-consuming the computation the image analysis method or the simulation method that require really long time. For example, the voxel-based morphometry, dosimetry, sometimes require very long time for the very accurate dose calculation. So, so let me explain it. So why we need the kind of the Monte Carlo simulation for the voxel-based dosimetry. So look at this. Actually, I have summarized the procedures for the personalized dosimetry. Actually, for the personalized dosimetry, we need to actually first we should calibrate SPECT city for the absolute activity quantification, and then we should obtain the multiple SPECT city data for the calculation of the cumulative activity, and then to acquire those kind of time activity curve, we should image registration, and we should draw the volume of interest, and then based on this volume of interest that require really long time for human and the time and the human effort to obtain the time activity curve as the coefficient. And then we give this data to the Olinda program, for example, for the dose calculation. But this kind of Olinda program is based on the standard framework. So it doesn't care about our the variation in our anatomy or something. So it seems to me that we use a lot of time and a lot of effort to calculate individual time activity curve, but at the last stage we do really wrong thing. We didn't care about the variation in our anatomy. So I think this is same as let me see. You dribble very well, the ball very well, but at the last moment that you couldn't shoot the ball to the goals. Okay, your effort is really useless at the last moment. So this is why that I believe that we should do the patient-specific Monte Carlo simulation or something like that to get the real personalized data. Okay. So, but the voxel-based Monte Carlo simulation is a procedure that require really long time and it need really the very high the computation, the facility, the resource or something like that. So our idea was that whether we can replace those kind of Monte Carlo simulation by the deep learning networks. So, but I think there is some enough national, because as Professor Hong Yun Choi told yesterday, actually we use a kind of convolutional neural network. So actually but those calculation also based on the convolution. I mean that the convolving this kind of those kernel to our activity data to calculate those distribution. So I mean that actually that what the deep learning is doing is we can find some similarity between the what the deep learning is doing and those calculation procedures. So I would say that there is enough nationally that we can replace the Monte Carlo simulation by use of deep learning networks. So one of my students, Min Sang, has designed this kind of the UNet architecture. So in which we give the CT and the PET data. Actually, we tested it using our PET to this deep learning network, and we trained this guy to produce those rate map as a output of this deep learning network. So let me see. So I will show those rate maps, generated using the Monte Carlo simulation and the deep learning the network. Actually that we simulate all of activities, all of gamma ray photons that we have detected. Actually, it will take about 200 days in the Monte Carlo simulation. So usually we could not do it. So actually we can just simulate about 5% of gamma ray or the beta rays that we can measure. So by the way, that it takes about 200 days or days if we give up some accuracy. Yeah, but deep learning computation takes about 3 or 4 minutes or something. So we can dramatically reduce the computation. But the result is quite promising, and they look quite similar. So this is the dose map, the energy map, generated using the very long time consuming the Monte Carlo simulation, but the deep learning output looks quite similar. So now that in nuclear medicine there are many image processing procedures that we can improve by applying the Monte Carlo simulations. For example, that the scatter correction. Actually, that in SPECT we just use very simple scatter correction, the energy window-based scatter correction. But if we do Monte Carlo simulation, we can improve the scatter correction as well. Or if we can use Monte Carlo simulation for the image reconstruction of some the radioisotopes that produce both of beta ray or the gamma ray or something like that. So if we can replace those kind of time-consuming but very accurate jobs by using the deep learning, I think that it will be quite useful. So let me just summarize my last talk. So as I showed you, so deep learning was quite useful for the automatic 3D volume interest to reduce human effort, and the deep learning was deep learning worked well for the angular the reduction of angular sampling and the recovery of the fully sampled sinograms, and even we can mimic the Monte Carlo simulation procedures. Okay, thank you. So, any questions?
So when you are doing the voxel-based dosimetry, how much time is devoted to dose rate? Among the entire time, dose rate, image generation, how much percent of time? 200 days is among 300 days, or just 201 day. So at first dose rate maps, and then what's the next step?
Yeah, actually, that once we obtain this dose rate map,
Yeah.
then if we want to know the organ-based dose, so we also need to draw volume interest on each organ. So yeah, so it takes additional time for the final calculations, but actually dose rate map calculation is also time consuming.
So actually, I asked a little bit the incorrect question. Why? Because that dose rate and voxel-based dosimetry. That dose rate means observed dose.
Yeah.
Ah,
The physical dose, I mean,
So-
the physical dose.
yeah. So actually, physical dose.
Yeah. Physical dose.
Actually, I supposed immediately that you are at first making activity rate map and then calculate the S value, putting in the S value.
Actually, we don't need to calculate S value in the voxel-based dosimetry. Yeah, because so because we track every the particles, actually we don't need to know about the S value between the voxels and something.
The question was because I already know that Professor Jason Lee's group with the same postdoc, or when she was a student, they published a variable, the simple, fast calculation of S values per voxel or per voxel.
Actually, so in our previous approach, we use multiple voxel level S values, multiple voxel level S values for different different tissues. But I would say that Monte Carlo simulation is much more difficult but much more accurate method than any value-based ones, because we actually basically it means that we calculate the S value for each different voxels with different activity and different the attenuation coefficient. So yeah, this is the more advanced technique than our previous approach.
Yeah, so that's what I mean, more advanced. So that's the reason why nobody is asking questions, but we have 5 minutes more. So then I would just make this using questions, and he's going to answer. They say, here we have human, and we inject radioisotopes, and then it's distributed all over the body, here and brain. And then we are interested in some critical organ. It's receiving whatever radiation from the adjacent organ, adjacent or remote organs. That's the kind of a basic principle. And for almost 50 years, using a huge amount of government money, our nuclear engineer colleagues in the College of Engineering, they were trying very hard to make a silly human model like this. It's just kind of a thin man, right? And then they just made a liver like this and heart like this. So even the elementary school child does not like this kind of doll. Okay, and then the organs came to become source, and target or source and target. So it's kind of taking turns play. Liver, once we just think that liver is a kind of the radiation recipient, then it's kind of the organ of interest, and then all the other organs are just kind of sources, radiation sources, and pretend they are victims. And then if the heart has a high activity, then there is a high radiation, and that itself is going to be also the source. So when we were young, when we were making the first Korean textbook of nuclear medicine in Korean, 1991, I was just kind of proofreading the chapter. It's sigma delta pi. Sigma delta pi. and it's called S. I could not understand what it means. That's just kind of, it is not actually mathematics driven, it's physics. Physics means that there is no derivation. It's just kind of put everything in line and believe it. So it is kind of a religion, okay? Belief system. So it's okay. So then S value. But if it is going to become the voxel-based dosimetry, every voxel is going to become the source, and every voxel is become the victim or recipient of radiation. So for this, at first, Dr. Arun from Nepal, his ex-student is now in not Kathmandu, some other city, was working, and he presented several times in my lab meeting, in our lab meeting. So what he was doing was just at first make a very good image. That's a scout image, and then at least he was supposed to make several acquisition and take a time radioactivity curve, and then they calculated all those area of the curve, and that's that voxel's the radiation activity profile and the amount of radiation emitting. And now with that image, so that emitting the radioactivity is going to be observed by some the voxel of interest. So entire body is voxel of source, entire body is a voxel of interest to receive how many. We need to estimate how many the observed dose grays are sieverts are going to be received. So while they are doing this, and he did the Monte Carlo, and he never went back. So when I asked him, he was always doing that calculation, simulation, Monte Carlo simulation. Actually, he was he seems to be relaxed. And computers are doing calculation for 200 years. But times are ticking, and his due time is coming on. So I was not. He was agitated and he was embarrassed and he could not. So, but and the Dr. Lee, the Vincent Lee, she was doing the bearing S value. So while listening to his lecture, I immediately thought that that kind of activity is going to be combined with S value, and then with some magic easily. But your idea is not that. So please explain once again. So that's that.
Yeah, so
skipping everything.
Yeah, so actually usually for the old days, the people just use the same S value for all of the voxels.
Yeah, previously.
Yeah, previously.
In the textbook.
Yeah, so but so we have devised a new method, in which we use multiple about 20 the S values that depends on the tissue property. I mean, based on each attenuation coefficient or something. Yeah, but actually, this method, Monte Carlo method, is a kind of much more utilizing much more S values.
Yeah. So in terms of actually that 20 variety of S values, his invention, another invention, which was published in Journal of Nuclear Medicine. Recently, Journal of Nuclear Medicine. You might just later find out and read. It's just kind of an easy reading. Why? Because I am one of the co-authors. I needed to just scrutinize all those the statements and the sentences and paragraphs, and I could understand very easily follow. Dr. Lee, student Lee, and Professor Lee's idea. Finally, I was just actually enlightened. I started to believe that. However, so at that time, and please be reminded that Monte Carlo simulation is like gold standard. So it's just like a Monte Carlo, the simulation is actually more popularly used by the neutron transport in the reactor. We have a very good experts in College of Engineering in the nuclear department of nuclear engineering, and they do use the MCNT previously. Now Olinda, Olinda is just dedicated.
Mostly we use in a gate Monte Carlo simulation.
Yeah, gate, the recently gate. Previously it was egg.
So MCNT and the
Some
EGS.
EGS. I remember it's eggs. But EGS and MCNT and evolved to become the gate, GATE. So they doing Monte Carlo simulation, and there is no need to use the S value. Then your paper is already obsolete.
Right. So
That's what happens. The students are working very hard to understand and adapt to their institution, and he already fled away to just kind of using this. So I was left behind. Actually, this paper is still is not published yet.
we are writing the paper.
Yeah, write the paper. Okay. Then somebody listens to your lecture and do the homework overnight, and then just kind of a scoop. We just say it's a scoop. Scoop is, and so there is a reason. And YouTube streaming is okay. Okay. So now we understand, right? Yeah. So. 그새 사라진 거예요? 나 S밸류 왜 읽었지 그거?